Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This evening, I would like to speak with you about anger. I'm in favor of it. I'm in favor because as much as I hate being angry, hate the way it affects my psyche, my family, and friends, I am even more terrified of getting to the point where I would not rage against the wanton murder of innocent citizens at an Independence Day parade in Highland Park, or against the slaying of a heroic police officer, Lauren Courts, in the streets of Detroit by a repeat offender. I am deeply worried that as a community, we may all become so numbed by the barrage of infringements on our civil rights that are buffeting us seemingly on a daily basis that we will come to passively accept them as inevitable. I am petrified that I will no longer be able to hear the cries of innocent Ukrainian citizens over the sounds of the more inviting Wimbledon tennis match on TV. And yet, despite all of this, in the Pirkei Avot it asks, who is strong? And the answer, he who can control his anger. In our Torah portion this week, Chukat, Miriam has just died, and her brother Moses is stricken with grief. Instead of comforting him, the people of Israel approach him with yet another kvetch. They are thirsty. They should have stayed in Egypt. What was Moses thinking leading them out to this barren wilderness? So Moses turns to God, who instructs him, saying, "Take this rod and assemble the community, and before their very eyes, order the rock to yield its water." Moses takes the rod as God has commanded, raises his hand, and strikes the rock twice with his rod. Out flows copious water. But because Moses struck the rock in anger, God informs him that he will not be allowed to lead the people of Israel into the promised land. I mean, God could just have sent him to anger management classes or perhaps put him in timeout. But banishment from the ultimate goal of his 4-decade trek through the desert, just for striking an insentient rock, seems a bit severe. So, I cannot even imagine what God would have done to me in my first weeks here in Michigan. You see, I was used to driving in New York City. Now understand that there are no lane markers on the streets there. Delivery trucks park right in the middle of the roads. Taxi drivers swerve back and forth between the non-existent lanes with their horns blaring constantly. And the only way to navigate this cacophonous mess is with one hand on the steering wheel and the other gesturing out the window, often with one finger firmly extended. Fresh out of school, we needed some proper clothing, and a friend advised us to try shopping at the Boardwalk Strip Mall. I was about to make a turn into the parking lot when someone cut me off. And with my window open, I let her know what I thought of her driving in no uncertain terms and with a gesture or two, I am sure. At which point, Wendy turns to me and says, "Paul, I think that was the sisterhood president." So, how do we retain the righteous anger that spurs us to take action against injustice, while at the very same time shed the pointless rage that we too often bring into our homes, our workplaces, our children's little league and soccer games, and to incidents of road rage as well? As it happens, our Torah portion contains another important passage this week, and it involves the Parah Adumah, or the red heifer. But it is so enigmatic that even the wise King Solomon is said to have admitted that the rituals surrounding this red cow were beyond his understanding. And since I don't really understand it either, I will not attempt to explain it to you. But the coincidence of the story of the red cow with the story of Moses' anger brought to mind a vignette from the autobiography of the baseball player and manager, Billy Martin. Now, I remember Martin from his days as the Yankees manager. I lost track of how many times he was suspended or ejected from games due to his constant explosions of rage. When I moved here, I learned that Martin also had a stint in Detroit. So you Tigers fans probably remember the Billy Martin who was constantly involved in fistfights and barroom brawls, not to mention confrontations with the umpires. Once, he and his good friend Mickey Mantle were doing a little hunting down in Texas, where Mickey had a friend who would let him hunt on his ranch. When they got there, Mickey told Billy to wait in the car while he went in and cleared things with his friend. The owner quickly gave him permission to hunt, but he also asked Mickey to do him a favor. He had a pet mule in the barn who was going lame, but he didn't have the heart to euthanize him as he should. So he asked Mickey to do it for him. On the way back to the car, Mantle hatched a little practical joke to play on his old friend Billy. Reaching the car, he got in and slammed the door shut. What's wrong? Billy asked. Mickey told him that the owner had refused to let them hunt there after all. I am so mad at that guy, he declared, that I am going out to that barn and shoot one of his mules. When they got to the barn, Mantle jumped out of the car, grabbed his rifle, and ran to the barn to do the owner's bidding. But when he got back to the car, he saw that Martin had also taken out his gun, and smoke was curling from its barrel. "What are you doing, Billy?" he shrieked. "We'll show that son of a gun," Billy replied. "I just shot 2 of his cows." Have you killed any cows lately? Have you struck any rocks? Cursed at any sisterhood presidents? How do you deal with anger? And if you have your anger well under control, how then do you stoke the righteous fury required to stand up against injustice? And if you do that, then how do you prevent even that righteous anger from overflowing into your personal life? For as Joan Baez famously sang, "A martyr's a nuisance to live with at home." If you are like me, lately you are finding yourself angry virtually every day in the face of some new onslaught to our collective humanity. Anti-Semitism from the far left, neo-fascism from the far right, the slaughter of innocents, threats to our democracy, to our religious freedoms, to a woman's right to choose, to our rights of privacy, to Israel, to our planet, and thus to our collective future. As Jews, we cannot become inured to injustice. But neither do we want to spend our lives in a state of constant rage. How do we strike the proper balance? A few weeks ago, in the face of the massacre in Texas, a member of Temple came up to me before services and expressed how angry he was at God for permitting such an atrocity to occur. How can God let such things happen? I understood completely how he felt, and yet I am going to have the chutzpah to suggest tonight that God is actually the answer to our problem and not the cause. Because first, we must understand that clearly whatever God is, God cannot stop massacres. Otherwise, the Holocaust would never have happened. It would appear that God has indeed imbued human beings with free will. And sometimes, alas, that free will is evil. So, how is God the answer? Because I believe that it is through relationship with a higher power that we can best achieve the equanimity, the perspective, and the courage to remain both angry and not angry at the very same time. For me, it is only through prayer that I am able to balance on such a delicate spiritual and emotional tightrope, albeit precariously. It is almost as if God is a big jungle gym in the sky, and when the kids are being mean in the playground, I feel I can lift myself out of the fray, gain some sacred perspective, and lower myself back down into real life, better able to deal with the challenges that unfortunately still confront me. And it works not just for me, a rabbi. Studies have shown that people of faith are more able to deal with emotional stress, are more resilient in times of turmoil, and more able to face challenges with equanimity. If God cannot make our problems go away, perhaps God can help hone our reactions to those problems, help to funnel our rage into only the most productive and righteous of avenues. Which brings me to arguably the most important Jewish response to anger. After the latest instance of gun violence in Chicago, we met as a clergy to figure out how to respond. Several members of the Reformed community had been killed or injured in the attack, and members of our own temple family were actually there at the parade that day and were understandably traumatized by the experience. We felt we had to say something. So together we worded a social media post stating, among other things, that, quote, "Our hearts are broken." At which point one of our rabbis declared angrily, "I'm tired of our hearts are broken. I want to take action." And taking action is indeed the most powerful response to righteous anger. I know we are all feeling helpless, and I promise you, you will feel better if you do something. Make a donation to a charity which supports your value. Write a letter, or better yet, lobby in person the congressperson you feel to be responsible for the latest outrage. Or get involved in an organization that tackles your particular issue. In other words, see to it that your anger is redemptive rather than merely cathartic. As the Pirkei Avot teaches, it is not incumbent upon us to complete the task, but neither are we free to refrain from it. If we all try to translate our fury into even one positive and tangible expression of that anger, I predict that those deeds will serve to direct our ire away from our spouses or children, coworkers, or friends, and toward its more appropriate target. For I think we can all agree that hitting rocks, shooting cows, or making obscene gestures on Orchard Lake Road will not bring about positive change. But with God's help, I do believe that it is possible for us to be angry yet calm, determined yet joyful, and politically effective while also at peace. Oh God, in these very difficult and challenging days, help us to find the sacred balance that comes through prayer and through faith. And thank you, O God, for giving us the gift of anger, which serves as our best motivation, litaken et ha'olam, to fix the sometimes broken and often infuriating world that you have bequeathed to us. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be your will, O God, and let us say, Amen.